Okay, this is a continuation of the Mower saga, and what's happened is um, it would run and quit and run and quit. So we went through a series of things. I finally assured myself that it wasn't the carburetor because it had a new carburetor to try on it, and it ran different, but it still cut out. So then I did my YouTube research all over the place, and this is a Kawasaki engine that seems to be peculiar. But to make a long story short, I found a repair manual, a factory repair manual to check with an ohm meter that I can't get either the new. This is a new one and an old one. And the original one, and I finally went to the John Deere dealer and coughed up $100. I can tell this one's made in Japan, but it reads with an ohm meter exactly the way the original 30-year-old one reads. And so I got impatient because the readings that I was getting led me to believe that this probably was bad. But if it reads just like the new one, I'd have to say either the new one's bad or this one's good. But I can tell you definitely. See, I got impatient. This thing's only $11, $12. This is aftermarket. I didn't buy this at John Deere. I bought this at John Deere. I paid almost $100 for this. Of course, I'm not going to take it back because now I have one on the shelf that I know is brand new. I'm not going to, and there are pieces parts too, so I could make it look like this. But anyway, I'm certain at this point that this has got to make a difference because this one reads different than this one. Part of the problem with this is there are safeties on this thing too, which can add to the confusion. There's this little contraption here where all the wires come together when you got to have the handle down or the blade on or whatever. And from what I can tell, I watch people struggling. These Kawasaki engines were really common on John Deere. So the only thing I can say is I'm going to put this stuff all back like it was. I don't think I even recorded exactly how this thing would behave. I kept plugging and unplugging things and trying to start it. And the problem I was having was it was running and quitting, which would seem like a fuel problem. So, as simple as this machine is, this is a 1994-95 Bunton. Of course, Bunton was bought out by Bobcat Ransoms or something or other. But the engine is kind of universal, even though there's a designation. It might have something to do with the way the muffler's mounted on here, because I noticed how I couldn't get in here and get some of the bolts out. It was really tricky. Anyway, so I'm got my fingers crossed, and we're going to see if we can have any luck finally getting this thing running again. I really can't complain. This was never, the most I ever had was 7 customers, and throughout that time, and there were a number of years here where this just sat and didn't get used at all. So, I've had really good luck to go 30 years and not have to really mess with anything on this, besides change the oil and filter and stuff. So, flat tires. I made a video about the one tire's flat, and I thought there's a new wheel on it. Like when the wheel goes flat, you just buy the wheel and tire. You don't try to change. You don't try to fix the tire. Every time I do something like this, I end up spending money because there's something I don't understand about the process. But YouTube helps immensely sometimes. I'm going to try, after I do this, I'm going to try that trick where they kind of fast forward things and through things fast. And I think that's just a real simple little trick with the onboard editing software, but we'll see. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run. It's getting on close to a month. I've been trying to figure out what is going on with this mower. Um, and I fast forwarded through about an hour because I had to stop and go get a O-ring for the dipstick tube. But all I can say is you can watch the ending of this video because I have more video when I first pulled this out of the trailer this spring and how it was behaving. And it's had a little cough. It's for a long time, for most of its life, it's kind of had a hesitancy when you first start up and wanting to quit, and then it would run. But this year, it just refuses to keep running, and I can't keep it running. And I've explained, to not be redundant, I've probably explained that I have a new carburetor. I can go back to trying a new carburetor, put the other carburetor on, but it's a China carburetor. It's not a Japan carburetor. God knows, I think the John dealer wanted a couple $100 for a carburetor when I bought this carburetor that I have. And I've got the old carburetor back on here. I was getting the readings I get with the ohm meter don't match the specs in the factory manual specifically, which doesn't help me analyze perhaps what's going on with this. Is I'm getting, and the directions are to use the 1K scale, and you got to use the 2K scale, but that's okay, or the 20K, the 10K, the 20K. I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and go step by step and revisit. I'm about 99% sure the gray trigger switches underneath the dashboard, we're going to call it, there's really nothing wrong with those. They don't, they're triggering on and off, I swear. It's not like, and before I didn't record it, like I was able to unplug those things and make, I don't know, I'm just all over the map and confused as hell. And this thing is not as, there's no vacuum involved in this engine. It's not like the cars that make you give up from the early 90s, because I had these early 90s cars that just confounded me. It would be OBD1 and I went through a series of cars. I had Corollas and Festivas, and I would have these kind of problems that you just couldn't diagnose because the equipment wasn't there. And even now, okay, so I have a 2011 Yaris, and it's a much better analyzing system, but it still doesn't. You still have to manually try to diagnose. They point you in a direction, say here it might be this, it might be that, it might be this, and then you're on your own again. I watch one guy with a YouTube channel, if it's watching Westwork or something, he really is good at the electronic stuff, that he can understand and figure out these older, I'm just amazed at the things he understands how to do to, but he uses a much more sophisticated analyzer. I have no way that I know of to analyze this specifically except try and fail. And then you can't even be sure, because when you get stuff from China, my experience with China is often like you will have to adapt, fix, like the threading is bad, you have to, I mean, that's the problem with this too, is you can't be sure that the parts you're trying to use are correct. And so if the new carburetor that I'm trying to use, I'm going to go back, well, I'm going to try to make sure the safety system is working, and I'm going to have to sleep on and think about what's happening with the electronics, because I really haven't, because the ignition switch on and off, it's not a battery. I don't have a battery. This isn't an electric start either, so I don't have that further headache. So all I'm really trying to do is get the ignition and the safety system to work properly, and I keep thinking that's where the problem is, but I really, you know, I'm just going to have to think about this. I have to try to trace the way that kill switch wiring comes back. To further confound it too is when I bought this mower, they put an hour meter in it. It wasn't something that it came with from the factory, and the hour meter thing has never worked, but it's part of this system coming into the switch. In and out of the switch is this. Well, anyway, I'm going to have to do some more brainstorm, but when you listen to how this thing works, it's like I'm saying, it sounds like it could be the carburetor, it sounds like it could be the ignition system. It's just not definitive, and the ohm meter doesn't help enough to isolate this intermittent problem, and they give you a range of readings, and it's like, what are these things, you know? I mean, I think what some people do, I heard, is they would just cut that conglomeration where the three triggers, the three safety switches go into that epoxy box, but I'm short of cutting that thing loose yet, you know, because then I have no safeties, and I do kind of like, you know, having the safeties, even though I could probably get by without them. So that's where I'm going to leave the narration on this mower for now. So I'm suggesting that anybody that's interested, now there's about, I don't know if there's another 10 minutes here, but just listen to how this thing behaves. And I talk more about these safeties too as it gets to the end, but I mean, is it the carburetor? Is it the ignition system? I mean, it really is confounding to me. You know, I'm dealing with it, and then I'm listening to this video, and you know, like I say, I wouldn't know if that trigger, they call it the igniter. That's the small little thing that I replaced along. I was going to replace the coil, but the coil reads exactly the same with the ohm meter, and the new coil reads exactly the same as the old coil in its test. So I don't know why, you know, unless I know things can get warm, which, see, now I'm counting on this old coil to be okay because it reads identical to the new coil, but then how do you know that, okay, so if it gets hot, but then again, if I start it over and over again, and after it's hot, if I start and it runs for a while, then what is the answer to why if the coil was getting hot and not functioning because it got hot? Well, it's already hot now. So how come I can start it again after it stalls if that was the case? And I had one of those spark. That's something else I need to consider, is to try to watch the spark. I think there's a little thing that you can see how hot the spark is and see when it starts cutting out if I'm losing spark. I think that would be a really good idea at this point, is to see if I can get my hands on one of those where you can visually see the spark. I had one, I think it might have been in the house. We lost our house, it burned to the ground, and I lost a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm, you know, when something like that happens to you, you can't even remember the stuff you did. I had expensive drill bit things. I had the, oh my God, self-feed bits for plumbing, and I just lost, you know, and I can't even complain because my partner slash girlfriend, she lost all her lifelong photographs of her mom and dad and stuff, and if that isn't heartbreaking, you know, that's, you know, every time I want to complain about, you know, I lost this or that, well, and you know, and here's the thing. I went to, there's a old hardware closing down, and I went in there and got some of the bigger drill bits, the oversized ones. They had some on sale, and so I went to use one, it bent. So the stuff that I lost would have been made in America, and the only thing you can buy now is stuff made in China, and you know, I've experienced this already where the drill bits literally wear out the first time you use them. I know how to look at this stuff. I got in a disagreement with a person, the brother of my partner, who, you know, he doesn't understand that alloys and heat treatment and all this. He just thinks, I forget what I said. I was explaining all the really old, there was brass elbow stuff for copper plumbing. They have this place back there where they just have rows and rows and cubicles full of the old pipe, threaded pipe, fittings, nipples, elbows, stuff. And I'm looking at it and I can tell just by looking at it, it's old American made stuff that fit like stuff now. You get the first thread started in it and then it's already tightening up. You're not getting, everything's like this. Everything is like this. You're not going to be able to, if you lose your American made stuff, your 30, 40, 50 year, oh God, they had a bunch of Craftsman tools, enough of Craftsman sockets, just the sockets in these little bin things. People would come in and pay $2, but they didn't have them organized, and I spent quite a while going through these Craftsman sockets and stuff. And what I noticed was there's about 3 different generations of Craftsman sockets, and I'm not talking about what they're making now. I'm talking about, I remember now because I lived through this era where how the name, the Craftsman name was engraved into it, and then it was engraved with a laser on it. And I can remember the 3 stages of basically what I saw was probably 3 stages of Craftsman tools, the way they put their logo into the tools, you know. And I was going, oh, I'm buying, because I know the steel in those is better, you know, or at least that's, I just know, I know that's how it works, you know, the alloys, the way they make the steel. That's what, you know. And everybody's, I watched this long thing about how people were bragging about, oh, Harbor Freight lasts forever or whatever, and you know, and I'm going, you know, I'm just having a hard time believing it. I've had some Harbor Freight stuff, and okay, you can get by, I agree, you know. I got a buddy, and he's got equipment, all kinds of stuff, bragging about these water pumps that are blue that look like Honda, and it's in, you know, I can remember when Japanese was kind of a joke, and then Japanese became some of the better built than American, some of this stuff, and that would be true for the even the Kubota tractors that I used to think. Now they got the China tractors, you know, or Korean tractors and stuff. But when the thing about even what the metal is something to take into consideration. So, I mean, it's just the way things go. Like I say, the name of my channel is So It Goes. There's nothing you can do about this stuff. If you have old American stuff, hang on to it, you know, because there's a quality issue. It's almost as if the stuff was overbuilt and now they know how to make it just good enough. And, you know, how long it lasts depends. Like, I got guys bragging about Harbor Freight. Oh, I've had this tool last from blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, okay, you know. I used to not think so much of Sears tools because they were kind of, as opposed to brand name, who knows. Well, but I was always a fan of the automotive, the socket sets, certain things, because Sears didn't actually make anything of its own, of course. Kind of an early American version of China. I don't know how to explain, but I know that I trusted the Craftsman name and that you could take that thing in there anytime. Now I've heard that Harbor Freight, you can return anything anytime and they'll replace it. So, but you know, I don't know. I haven't had enough experience. I know I bought like a chop saw. What a piece of junk it is. I mean, Do I know how to explain what I'm saying? No. I mean, and then it all depends on how you take care of stuff. I've said enough. Just watch this mower behavior. So, I think it's a couple of things. Now, okay, so I think that igniter was bad, but I also think that the safeties, there's 3 safeties. And I have had these for years and years, but it looks like they still make them. So I'm gonna shut this off, and I'm gonna test these safeties. Hey, Dad. And it's confusing, like if it was. So to see the gray thing, and then there's that box, and there's another gray thing, and then there's another gray thing, and one is for the forward speed control, which actually is, and then one's for the blade, and one is the safety handles. Right? Yeah. So I guess we're going to test them one at a time.